I posted a Q&A box on my story yesterday morning, and I have been going through for the past 24 hours and answering questions on my Instagram story. And there were several people who left very similar questions, and then I also ended up having DM conversations with several people who had the same questions and issues that came from investing with coaches in the past. I myself have probably wasted a good 50 or so $1,000 on different coaches and coaching programs that were not what they were made out to be by the marketing. And in total, with different coaches and consultants, I've invested well over $200,000 into our business, into education for myself, our team, into business infrastructure for our systems, marketing and sales support. And there have been some investments that I made that were exactly what I needed at the time, that were just wonderful experiences. And there have been those that left me incredibly disappointed and wondering what I had paid for. Of all of the different coaching and consultants that I invested in, there is one program that has really stuck out to me as the biggest mistake, the biggest regret that I have in terms of investing. And what happened was, at the time, I was scaling very rapidly, and I'd gotten to a place in my business where we finally had enough clients and a large enough client roster that client escalations were starting to happen. And as somebody who had not been a consultant and advisor before, I didn't realize how common this was going to be. In the beginning, I internalized this as there's something wrong with me. I didn't do my job. Why is this not working? And I beat myself up over it for months. And what I came to understand is that a consultant business relationship is 50-50. And I had done my 50%, and there are going to be people who will not do their 50%. And there's absolutely nothing that you can do about that. That being said, this was the reason that I was attracted to this coach. So the majority of her marketing and messaging was about only attracting perfectly aligned dream clients so that you never have an issue and you never feel burnout in your business and you never have to process a refund ever again. And after consuming her content for several months, I sent a DM and was like, hey, give me the program details. Tell me all about it. And after a DM conversation with her, I felt really good about the solutions that she had presented. I agreed with her that I had a messaging issue and that we needed to change some of the support elements in our program, etc. And so I took that advice. And one thing about me is that I'm a good implementer. I read hundreds and hundreds of books in a year. And that's why we've been able to scale so quickly. It's why we're scaling to 8 figures with organic content, because I'm a good implementer. I can execute well. And so I thought it was me, and I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. And what ended up happening was I came off of my highest ever cash sales month at the time. We did $500,000. And that was my first really big month where I was like, I can do this. I can do 8 figures. And the very next month, I implemented the changes that she suggested, and our leads trickled to a halt. We stopped getting leads, we stopped getting inquiries, the sales slowed way down. And beyond that, I no longer felt like I could trust myself because she had told me that all of these different things that I was doing that were working for me were wrong. And of course, had a very good reason to back up why those things were wrong. And looking back, when most of the people's reasons are rooted in mindset and being magnetic to your ideal people and vibes, that's actually not concrete advice that's backed by any sort of data or psychology. And so I learned that lesson the hard way. But I feel like it was a really valuable experience for me because not only was I able to see the exact type of messaging, marketing, sales, and mentor I didn't want to be. But it also reaffirmed for me that I know what I'm doing. It reaffirmed for me that I know what drives results. It reaffirmed for me that the education and the books I've read and the people I've invested in, that those things that do work, that have been proven to work, are the right way to go. So after having these DM conversations, I have a lot of conversations with people on a weekly basis. I want to say daily, but it's usually several times a week, where they're telling me that they are super interested in working together, but they're terrified to invest because of XYZ. They were burned by a coach in the past. They invested a bunch of money and they didn't see an ROI. They were given really bad advice. They're implementing the things still that their coach had recommended to them, and it's working, but they're super burnt out, right? So there's a lot of things like this that cause people to be terrified to invest again. And I definitely felt that. And so, what I want to do for you with this podcast and with this episode is what I wish someone had done for me. And so, I want to fix the things that your coach broke in this episode, and I want you to walk away with clarity and a sense of direction. And I want to give you the information that you actually need to focus on to replace what your last coach didn't deliver. So I want to go through the top 5 things that I've had people tell me over the course of the last several months in my DMs that were gaps or things that they didn't get from different marketing and business programs that they obviously really, really wanted. And I'm going to give you my 2 cents and tell you what direction I would go if I were you. So the number one thing that I hear is that they wanted a clear strategy for consistent lead generation. And just about every marketing and sales and business program markets this as an outcome, is a consistent lead source, right? A way for you to take ads or social media or even referrals and turn it into a consistent lead generation machine. But what ends up happening is a lot of people walk away from these programs with really vague advice. Just post more, be more consistent. It takes time. Just make sure that you're having conversations in the DMs. And those things, while true to an extent, are not the things that are actually going to provide a consistent lead source for you. So the lead source that I use, that I would recommend, is organic content marketing. So leveraging the different social media platforms like Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube to generate leads for your business. And the reason that I like organic content marketing as opposed to paid ads on the different social platforms is because, number one, most people don't have the money up front to invest into putting enough money into ads to actually see what's going to work. The second reason is that if you can't convert with organic content, you're probably not going to be able to convert the people that you're paying to get in front of. So for us, what we've found is we were able to go from 0 to 7 figures within 12 months just by generating leads from organic social media marketing. And that is exactly what we do for our clients. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. We have hundreds of testimonials and screenshots and results that you can view on my social media. But I just want to give you my 2 cents as to what I would do strategically if I were you. So for most people, their lead generation system, specifically if you're using content, is not working and is not consistent for one of 2 reasons. One, you're not able to be consistent because you don't have a tangible production system in place that allows you to create consistent content in a way that's going to be low lift and not require a ton of time from you, the founder. Because as the founder, there's a lot of other things you want to be doing besides marketing and being an influencer for your brand, right? So what I do is I have a production process that allows me to map out all of my content 12 months in advance. And I do that because I really understand my audience, their symptoms, their desires, their gaps and what they're missing. And so because I understand those things on such a deep level, I'm able to plan very far out in advance in a way that is going to continue to be relevant for people. And I am also creating content that is directly aligned with what we're teaching inside of our offering. So, for example, if I am going to be talking about sales psychology and the 4 different buyer types in our offer, that is something that I'm going to be speaking about in my content. So, my content is derived from what is inside of our program. So, I'm not having to come up with content ideas. I'm not having to spend a lot of time ideating. I know what people's problems are. I know what the solution is. And so, high level, what I'm able to do is tell people what to do, not how to do it. We do the implementation inside the program. But what happens there is that my content is very structured. And what I mean by that is not even the tangible piece of content that I'm putting out, which we'll get into in a minute, but the production process is very structured. So I know exactly how many videos need to go out every single week on every single platform. We know exactly what our process is to take a video and turn it into 5 to 10 different formats of content. And we have it dialed in to where everyone on our team knows their responsibilities. They know what their due dates are, what their timeline needs to look at. And we know because of the data that we have collected and analyzed how many pieces of content need to go out and what exactly those pieces of content need to do to drive consistent leads for our business. So we know that if we post once a day on our social media, short form content, and we send out 1 podcast a week and 2 videos a week and 1 email a week, and we're able to spend 1 hour per week actually producing all of that content, and we're able to spend 1 hour per week actually producing the short form content and then repurposing those concepts into different pieces of content, we know that we will bring in 1 to 200 leads in that month, and reverse engineering from our close rate and the price points that we have our different offerings at, we are able to reverse engineer exactly how much we're going to make. So it's never feast or famine. There's never panic. It's just, these are the things we need to do. That's where a lot of people go wrong, is they're looking at, I have to get this many views and I need to go viral and I need this and I need that. And instead, our process focuses on the actions. We have collected the data to know exactly what actions are going to produce the results that we want. So our goals are action-based. We know that we need to film X amount of videos. We need to repurpose X, Y, Z, and that is going to produce the results that we want. And where a lot of coaches go wrong is they don't have a streamlined production process that they're able to give to you that will also be customizable to your business, because not every single business is going to be creating a ton of short form content. Not every single business makes sense to be marketing on LinkedIn. So there has to be this balance of a customizable system as well as a certain amount of structure so that you have the repeatable result, but it's also applicable to what you're doing, your team, and the way that you produce content. Now, the second problem that most people encounter with lead generation is the content itself. And most people are given the advice to post educational content, add value, educate people as to why they need you. And a lot of coaches and mentors also give scripts and templates and all kinds of different resources for content creation. The problem with that is because posting something, no matter how good it sounds, does not necessarily mean that it's going to be triggering the specific psychological, it's not going to be hitting on the specific psychological triggers that have to be present within your marketing for someone to make a purchase decision. Now, this isn't theoretical information. This is well-researched, science-backed, data-driven information. So what we know about the brain and the way it makes decisions is that there's essentially 3 decision-making layers. And your content needs to either connect with, or your content essentially needs to check each of those boxes for your audience's brain for them to be able to buy something, for them to even want to buy something. And so what happens is a lot of people have a content plan of very good ideas, and the ideas are fine, the concepts are fine, the things that you're wanting to talk about are fine. Those are not a problem. It's typically the way the content is being presented. So instead of saying 3 tips for how to do XYZ, what we would instead be shifting to is either highlighting the gap in their understanding, highlighting what mistake they're making, why what they've tried hasn't been impactful, right? We're bridging that gap for them. We're creating an aha moment. And along with that, there's certain overarching principles that are applicable to every person and what we understand about the brain and how it works on a primal level. There are also 4 different types of buyers, you guys have heard me talk about this, that care about different things when they're going to make a purchase decision. And those things are informed by their psychology, their environment, their past experiences. And so there's a lot of things that make up person's buyer type and why they buy the way that they do. Now, all of those things have been well researched in studies that honestly you don't even need to know about. What you need to know is what are the things that they care about, because that gives you a blueprint to make a sale. So, for example, an analytical buyer, what they care about is for you to lower the risk factor so that they feel safe investing with you. And so, the way that you can do that for an analytical buyer is to give them stats, to give them data, to give them an understanding of the ROI and what your process looks like, how it's a proven process to get them to their end result. Now, that's going to be something very different, right? You can see how a 3 tips for how to do this thing is not going to accomplish that. And so you're not even checking the boxes that need to be checked for your people to feel safe making a purchase decision and for their brain to go, oh, yes, this is something that I need. So typically, if you are not seeing the lead generation that you want to see, you're not seeing the lead flow that you should be seeing and that you need to be seeing for your revenue targets, then I want you to reverse engineer. So go back and even look at the most recent 5 or 10 videos that you've posted on social media. Did they speak to each of the 4 buyer types? Did you speak to people's symptoms so that their primal brain was activated and they understood that what you're talking about is specifically for them? They're able to self-identify with your content. Have you overcome any of the objections that your audience is going to have before making a purchase decision with you? Have you positioned yourself as an expert? Really important for your driver buyers. Have you talked about your villain and how you are different and positioned yourself as different? And just saying that you're different is not actually being different. You have to explain to people why you do what you do, why it's more effective than what other people do. And oftentimes you're going to also tie that into your personal experience and what you've learned and why you believe the things that you believe. So your villain is going to be really important because it allows you to kind of carve out a piece of your industry. And when people get almost there, they're almost right when they say, "Oh, you need to create content that magnetically attracts your ideal dream clients." Speaking to your villain is actually going to repel the people who are not your dream clients so that the rest of your content can do the heavy lifting in converting the people who stay. And if you feel like you're doing each of those things, but it's still not working, that's where you need to dive into your data, dive into your analytics, and pinpoint exactly what the gap is in your marketing. You have the power to change this. You don't necessarily need another coach or mentor to do it for you. That can shortcut the amount of time that it's going to take you to do it, but you can do this yourself. You do have the control to change this situation. Now, number 2, I've heard this a lot as well, is that they got really generic content advice that just didn't work. Most people teach creating content from an engagement first mindset and kind of focusing on one size fits all formulas rather than zeroing in on and actually having an understanding of buyer psychology. Now, the intention with these one size fits all formulas, I think, is good, but it misses the mark. What they're trying to do is create a streamlined, proven process that will allow people to get leads and sales. The problem is that these proven frameworks, they are proven to work for some people, but the problem is that you don't know what actually caused them to work if you don't have an understanding of consumer psychology. And these coaches that are giving them to you, they have a decent success rate. These frameworks, it's not to say that they don't ever work. They probably do work for a lot of their clients, but you don't know what other things they're doing on their account or things that they've done in the past with their audience that are causing those things to work. If somebody has already done all of the objection handling, they've positioned themselves as an authority, they talk about their villains, they speak to people's symptoms, they really clearly narrate what people's desired outcomes are, and they've done all of those things, then yes, posting this one framework of video that is just engineered to kind of push people over the edge, it will be effective. But if that's the only type of content that you're posting, you're not creating a well-rounded, fulfilling experience for your audience. And so they're not going to buy from you. Okay. This also, ties back into the 4 different buyer types. And the 4 buyer types are very similar to the 5 love languages in that you likely have a prominent buyer type. You likely have a prominent love language, how you like to give and receive love, right? If you are familiar with that, then lots of people are either physical touch or acts of service or words of affirmation. But if you were in a relationship and your partner was only giving you words of affirmation and nothing else, none of the other 5 love languages, or only gifts and none of the other 5 languages, right? Those are not going to be a very well-rounded and fulfilling relationship. And the same thing is true when it comes to your audience. You probably have people who are a prominent buyer type that are a driver buyer, or they're an analytical buyer, or an expressive buyer. However, just speaking to them through their one buying love language is not enough to create a well-rounded, fulfilling relationship with that buyer. So these frameworks and one size fits all, like content scripts and templates and whatever, those can be effective, but they have to be connected with a greater strategy. So if you are doing all the things, you're speaking to all 4 buyer types, you're hitting on each of those psychological triggers that need to be present, then yes, those templates are going to work. But what is typically missing is a fundamental understanding of what those psychological triggers are that cause people to actually make a purchase decision. And so it's not you, it's not that you're doing it wrong, it's not that there's anything wrong with you or that there's something wrong with your offer. It's likely that this template, it does work, but there's other things that you're missing that are causing it to not be so effective. I hear from a lot of people say that when they're given these one-size-fits-all formulas, they need to just show up authentically, be yourself, do your best. And I just think that that's really bad advice because number one, we know that practice doesn't make perfect, right? Perfect practice makes perfect performance. If you've ever read the book, The Talent Code, something that they talk about is the way that muscle memory is created and how white matter is generated inside of the brain. And that allows the muscle memory to be developed inside of your brain. And what you're doing that you may not even realize is that when you are creating content, you are practicing a skill that should turn into muscle memory. And so when you're doing it ineffectively, when you're doing it wrong, when you're just showing up consistently, consistent bad content is actually creating a bad habit. So showing up consistently is not actually a fix-all because showing up consistently wrong is creating a habit that you are then going to have to break. So this comes back to understanding your buyers and understanding the psychology of what drives purchase decisions. Oftentimes, the content that you are taught to create is only targeting the neocortex in people's brain, which is the logical decision-making part. That's where logically people are able to say, I'm going to get X ROI from this. Logically, I see how this is going to work. Logically, I can see why this would work for me. But you're missing the other 2 decision-making layers. You're missing the primal brain, which is the subconscious knee-jerk reaction that ultimately controls our behavior. And you are missing the limbic system, which is your emotional decision-making part of your brain. And so if you're not hitting home to all 3 layers of the brain's decision-making, you're not able to effectively bring people through the customer journey from discovery to purchase. And so that's why the framework that you've been given, it likely is effective in one area. Maybe it's effective for the logical part of the brain or for the emotional part of the brain. But if your content as a whole is not speaking to all 3 decision-making layers, you're still not going to be seeing the conversions and the lead flow that you want to be seeing. So that's how it works. And just to sign off on that, create content that will be valuable by creating aha moments for people, by helping them to understand what they're missing or what isn't working or where they're going wrong. That is infinitely more valuable for people than giving them tips and tricks for a problem they don't know that they have. The next thing that people want from coaches but walk away feeling disappointed about is having a repeatable sales process that allows them to convert leads into sales effortlessly. Here's my thing on effortless sales. Sales require effort. It's going to take some work. Now, should it feel hard? Should it feel like you are jamming your offer down someone's throat? No, but it is going to require effort. It's not going to be effortless, but it is going to become easier. You will develop that muscle memory if you learn, again, what? The principles of what caused someone to buy. Because if you understand the principles of what makes someone's brain decide to make a purchase decision, you can improve your content, you can improve your sales process, and you can even improve the results and success rate of your offers. But let's talk about sales for a second. So a lot of coaches, they tend to either give outdated, high pressure sales tactics that just give everyone the ick. Oh my gosh, you guys. Soren got on the phone, my husband, if you don't know him, I think it was like last week, and he was looking at a software that we were potentially going to set up for our business. And he got on the sales call with this person, and he was like, great, thanks so much for the information. I'm going to have to talk to my wife. And the guy was like, well, is she here? Can you get her on the phone? And Soren was like, oh my gosh, I'll go talk to her. And so he comes out, and I said, go back and tell him that the reason that he lost the sale is because of his trashy objection handling. There are better ways to handle objections. And by the way, if you're getting objections, it's because you missed something. It's not an invitation for you to, like I said, force your program down someone's throat. It's an opportunity for you to look at the gap, look at the information that they don't have, that their brain needs to be able to make a purchase decision. Again, objections mean that you missed something. Or number two, their advice is just sell in the DMs. Then you don't have to get on the phone with people. Dude, if you can't sell on the phone, you're really going to have a hard time selling in the DMs, because the thing is that in the DMs, people can walk away at any time. If they don't want to respond to you, if they don't like your pressure sales tactics, they can just leave you on red. It's a lot harder when someone's on the phone. So if you can't sell in a sales consult, on a Zoom call, in an effective and empathy-led way, you're not going to be able to sell in the DMs. So that's just bad advice. Now, here's my problem with this, is that most people were not ever taught how to sell. They were taught how to pitch. And your pitch is this much of the sales conversation. All these other things have to happen. Just like we talked about with the content, there's all these other things that have to happen to check those psychological boxes that your brain needs to make a decision. And so a repeatable sales process is not about forcing people. It's about leading with empathy and integrity and helping people to understand why your product or service is going to solve their problem. And if it doesn't, you need to communicate that as well. So what most people do is they get on the call, they ask people, tell me about your business. And then they probably ask one or two questions about what they've tried in the past, and then they pitch their service. I am not shocked to hear that that didn't work out for you very well. And if you're following the script that your coach gave you, not surprised to hear that that's not working out for you very well. So here are the phases of a sales conversation, and you can apply this to both DMs and consults. Now, DMs are going to be a more condensed version of this, but you still want to make sure that you're thorough and that you are leaving no stone unturned so that you are, again, ethically leading people through your sales process. So first and foremost, you have to build rapport. If you don't know about any of these things, there are a lot of sales books that will actually give you this information in a much more tactical way than a lot of coaches will. But building rapport is basically just building that no trust factor with people. And it's essentially just creating some sort of human connection. So this could be where they're from. Maybe you grew up there. Maybe you saw something on their Instagram that you resonated with. Maybe you both have the same kind of dog. Maybe you have kids that are the same age. But looking for some sort of common ground where you can have a genuine conversation is not only going to disarm them so that they feel comfortable actually sharing the information that you need so that you can effectively bring them through the sales conversation, but it's also going to help you settle into your body and settle into the conversation, because body language is everything when it comes to sales. From rapport, you then move into discovery. And I will give you my magic question that I like to ask at the beginning of every sales conversation, which is, what is coming up for you that prompted you to book this call? This allows me to cut right to the root of what is going on. So immediately after setting the frame, I'm going to ask that question. And what that does is it allows people to actually think about, what is it that's coming up for me? Because if you ask them to tell you about their business, if you ask them what the biggest problem is that they're having, right? You're asking them to zero in on a very specific thing, and sometimes they don't even know what it is. They just know what the symptoms are. They don't even know what the real problem is. But what happens is when you ask them what their problem is and they tell you what they think it is, then you are then selling to the problem that isn't. So what you want to do is ask what's coming up for them. And what this does is it reframes their brain to be thinking about, here's what I'm experiencing. And then you can reverse engineer from there. Within discovery, instead of having a set list of questions that you ask, instead what I would do is have kind of a set criteria that you're trying to meet. And by criteria, I mean depth of understanding of their business. So for me specifically, when I'm having a sales conversation with somebody, I want to know three things. I want to know what their lead acquisition system is and if it's working. I want to know what their conversion and sales system is and if it's working. And then I typically want to know a bit about their client delivery and if it's working and if it's able to support the lead flow that they have and or that we're going to create for them. So I want to check those boxes and make sure I understand those things. Now, for every person, I'm going to ask different questions. A lot of them might be similar because there's certain things that I need to know, but I'm going to ask different questions to get to the root of what is actually coming up for them and what the problem actually is. Because that way I can, again, lead with integrity. I can make an ethical recommendation for them based off of what I truly believe would be best for their business. And sometimes that is, I can help you with this. Here's what we'll do. And then I can go into the pitch. Sometimes we're not a good fit, but I actually know somebody who would be, and I can send them that way. Sometimes it's, we're not a good fit. I don't know anybody who would help you, but I do have these free resources that will definitely get you started. And so I can do that. And so any of those outcomes on a consult are perfectly acceptable outcomes for me. After discovery, this is the part that most people struggle with the most, and you've made sure that you really have all the information you need to transition into your pitch. Now, your pitch is going to be, like I said, a very small amount of what this interaction actually looks like, but your pitch is going to encompass a few things. Number one, let me backtrack, the transition. So the transition is where you're actually going to get tie downs and actually get permission to pitch. So you want to understand, is this a really big problem for them that they want to solve right now? And why do they want to solve it now? And again, is this actually a fit? If it is, then we can transition into the pitch. So starting with your pitch, it is going to really come in three parts. And most people don't teach this, they just give you a script. But you want to actually customize this. And so this is something that you'll want to practice customizing for every client. So number one, we want to lead with our recommendations and what we've assessed their gaps to be. So if we know that they're struggling with creating content and we know that they're creating a lot of visibility, but that content isn't necessarily converting into sales, then I'm going to hit home to that and I'm going to explain to them what precise teaching or principle or framework or process or thing that we do inside of our advisory offerings is going to solve that problem. And so I am explaining to them not the entirety of the program, not the entirety of everything that we could teach, but instead I'm saying, here's your problems. Here's exactly how we solve those problems on a high level. This is how. And then I move into the tactical side of things. So logistically, what that looks like is XYZ. Here's the length of the program, what the support looks like, why the support has been set up that way, and then you can drop the price. If you've done each of those things and you did effective discovery, you're not going to get objections. If you do get objections, that's okay. You can circle back around, find what you've missed, and then go back into your close. Understanding those principles, again, is what is going to give you a streamlined sales process and focusing on those things. When you understand what it takes to bring somebody from interest to purchase, you can check those boxes every single time so you have a repeatable process. Without a doubt that you can close 60% of your sales or 80% of your sales if you're the founder, and then that gives you options, right? You can then move to DM closing. You can focus on email. You can apply those boxes that need to be checked to your sales page. You can apply it to your lower ticket offers. And most importantly, you can teach it to a sales team as you scale. If you're scaling to 8 or 9 figures, you're going to need a sales team. And so understanding these principles effectively will allow you to train and expand your team. But just having a script that you're copying and pasting won't do that for you. The next thing that I've been hearing a lot is very unsustainable strategies. And I'm just going to call them hustle-based scaling, which is doing more to make more, which will always lead to burnout. And also ad heavy models where you're leaning into ads and you're investing money into your marketing before your organic has actually been optimized. This is my $1 million rule, and people hate it when I talk about this, but here's where I'm coming from. Like I said, we were able to do $1 million within our first year in business from organic content alone. And that's not because I'm a fantastic content creator. It's because I understood the psychology of why people buy. And so what's important to me is to have our clients test and learn and create that muscle memory with organic content. I don't want to make somebody pay to test content that may or may not work. When they're going to invest money into ads, I want them to know with certainty that this piece of content is going to convert. We know it's going to convert because we've already made over $1 million using this exact process. Okay. So where I'm coming from when I talk about ads. Now, the other thing with like hustle strategies, usually you hear people saying things like post 3 to 5 times a day, every day. And I just want to say, I've made videos too where I've said you need to be posting 3 times a day. But I also always pair that with the caveat of that this isn't forever. I recommend posting more in the beginning so that you can shorten the learning curve. I don't post 3 times a day, but we're scaling to 8 figures organically. And so it's about impact and optimizing and refining. And that's where a lot of the data and understanding how to leverage your analytics comes in. And again, these copy and paste methods aren't going to work for that because your analytics are going to look different than somebody else's. And what your analytics are telling to you to do could be completely contradictory to what somebody else's analytics and their data is telling them to do because every business is different. So when you're wanting to work with a mentor, you really need to look for somebody who has marketing that details different methodologies. If it seems like it's a one size fits all, that's a red flag. Okay. That's why I love the way that we teach consumer psychology and neuromarketing is because we're able to kind of standardize framework where it's like, okay, because the brain needs to check these boxes because there's been millions of dollars of research to support this. But then what you're able to do is work within those checked boxes to customize it for your brand, for your voice, for what your audience cares about. And so there's a lot of nuance there still, which is why we have so much one-on-one support in our offerings. We don't do just group only programs where you are getting a set curriculum and then you're getting set answers where you show up to a group call, they're teaching a one size fits all method, and then you're going on with your day and it either works or it doesn't. This is why we have Slack with a client support manager with a client success manager where their entire job is to get you results and to take our principles and strategies and customize it to your business. This is why when we have daily group calls that are in a group setting, they're not just group trainings and then go off and hope for the best. It's Q&A. We're actually implementing and working with you inside of your business, which all of that to say that doing more does not necessarily equate to making more, posting more content, doing more sales calls, spending more hours on your business does not equate to more growth. What equates to more growth is focusing on the 20% of things that are actually going to move the needle. And the only way for you to ascertain what those things are going to be is having an understanding of how to read your metrics, your data, and your analytics, because that is what is going to create the roadmap for you, not a random coach's proven framework, system, processed 12-step put on a raincoat, okay? It's going to do anything for you, as you've probably experienced. And then the next big thing that I hear is that they walked away from a program feeling more confused than when they started because they were given methods and tools that they were promised would work, but then it's not working and they don't understand how to customize it. So I have a couple things to this, okay? One, I think a lot of these coaching programs are way too short to actually provide the results that they promised. A 3 or even 4 or 6 month program is not necessarily going to be enough for you to get enough data for you to be able to then refine and be able to move forward with confidence, right? Implementation is always going to trump information. And if you're signing up for a program where you're mostly just going to get information and there's no real accountability around implementation, you're probably going to continue to struggle. And what I've learned is that programs that have more information and more modules and more education are actually a lot less impactful than the programs that are very streamlined, they're very cut and dry as to what you need. And a lot of people, and this goes into the more to make more type of thing as well, but a lot of people are very, like, it comes from a place of generosity. They want to give their clients everything. They want to teach them everything that they know. But the thing is everything that they know is not something that they need to implement, right? If your program is designed to get people a specific outcome, then the only things that should be in that program are the things that will actually provide that outcome for them. So if you're looking into a program and there's a list of modules and you think to yourself, man, I don't even know if I'm going to watch all of those videos, it's probably not a program that you want to invest in. The other thing is a lot of people lack action plans, which forces them to kind of templates rather than customizing for their own business. And I'll say this again, you probably don't need more information. You need execution and implementation. And the best strategy for you is the one that you stick to and execute, okay? Now, here's what I want you to know about this. If you are feeling lost and dazed and confused in your business, again, this comes back to your data and your metrics, okay? Feeling like you don't have enough leads coming in, what does the data tell us? Do we actually have enough leads to support the revenue goal that we have? If you're feeling like you're having a hard time making sales, is it actually your sales process or do you not have enough leads? Do you have enough leads, but you're not closing them? Maybe it is your sales process, right? A lot of people also tend to hyper-focus and hyper-fixate on their content. Your content might be fine. Your content might be reaching enough people and actually converting them and bringing them to the link in your bio. Maybe it's the link in your bio that isn't converting, right? There's a lot of different variables. And the only way for you to determine what you need to focus on is to look at those metrics and data. Because if somebody is selling you the perfect, whatever, 5-step framework to have a sales page that converts every single time, again, it might work. But if your sales page isn't the problem and you don't even have enough people going to your sales page, that's not going to help you. So what I want you to do and just encourage you to do is to step back and look at your data before you make an investment. And one last note on that. If you absolutely don't know how to look at your data and you don't know what to look at and you truly have no idea what the gap is that is causing you to stay stuck in your business, that is why we have free gap assessments that you can book with our team, and they will review all of your information. They'll listen to what is coming up for you, and they will provide their recommendation for the gaps that they see and where the most important areas of focus are so that you can then formulate your next steps. So I always encourage people to book one of those if they're feeling super in their business, because we're here to help you. Now, a lot of these things that I talked about on a high level, you can see in action in my own content. So if you wanted to see some live examples of this, head over to my Instagram at kenda.laney And you can see how I do this in my own content. Maybe it'll help spark some ideas. And as always, my DMs are always open. So if you would like to chat through more about this, or you have stories or things that you would like to share or vent or get off your chest, please DM me. I am here for it. I'm happy to hear it. And it ultimately helps me create better content, because the more I understand and know about you, the better content that I can create that will solve your problems. So, just my final thought here, the problem is probably not you. And it's probably not what you were taught either. It's the way that you were taught. And so, what people are typically missing is a high level understanding of what drives buying behavior. If you have that high level, then you can take these different tactics and frameworks and templates that people give you and make them applicable to your brand and understand where to strategically employ them so that it gets you the desired result that you want. So hopefully by the end of this episode, you should have some more direction. You should understand where to fix, and you should at least understand where you're going wrong so you know where to focus your efforts and attention. And I want this episode to be one that rebuilds trust, not just in coaches, but in yourself. Because if you've felt lost after a program, it's not because you're not capable. It's because you don't understand from a high level how to strategically implement those different things into the areas of your business that will move the needle for you. The last thing that I want to share with you is this, because I did have several bad experiences with different coaches and programs. And what I didn't allow it to do was change me so that I wasn't able to invest ever again. What I do now is I, of course, am more selective with the people that I'm looking at and considering working with, but I'm really evaluating two main things. Number one, how likely is it that I'm able to produce the outcome that they are selling? And number two, how can I make this investment worth it for me, even if I don't get the desired outcome? So for me, I had another program that I had invested in, and it was not exactly what I needed, and the coach was kind of an asshole. But guess what? What I was able to see that made it worth it for me, I was able to see their funnel, their sales process. I was able to get a really inside look at a business that claimed to be doing $30 million a year, right? So that was beneficial for me. So I find ways that I can make an investment worth it for me, whether I get the marketed outcome or not. And then I'm looking at their content for substance, right? If somebody's content is made up of income claims and results, and that's the only thing that they talk about, they never hit home to how they got those results for people, where those people actually started, and giving you the high level theory as to why what they do works, why they believe, and what the actual process is, they're probably not somebody you want to invest with. Because if you still have an insane amount, not that you won't still have questions when you invest, right? But if you still have an insane amount of questions where it's just like a gray question mark, you're like, how are they doing that? They're doing that by selling you on the outcome. They don't actually have a high level psychologically backed process that is going to create those same results for you. So be wary, use your discernment. And if something doesn't feel right, maybe it's not. That's all for this episode. I would love it if you subscribed to the podcast and left a review, preferably a positive one. And like I said, my DMs are always open. So if you want to chat through anything, be sure to DM me and we can talk all about it. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.